And I think one of the things that you realise is once you start getting Green people elected, I think Caroline's a good example of that, Brighton Council's a really good example of that, what we did in Oxford's a good example of that, that you're a progressive voice on the council, and actually all those people that have got progressive ideas are able to voice them, and you actually get much better change.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to give people the message that politics does really matter. It isn't, you can be on Facebook all day, but actually ultimately it is about getting some power, unfortunately, and actually making some real change. So yeah. Just coming back to the education, and it's interesting because both my children are just about to go to university, and the level of debt that they're going to be saddled with at the end is really quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
And of course it changes the whole notion of going to university, doesn't it? Because you're going to university because you need to get a good job at the end, rather than going to university because it's meant to be an enlightening experience and it's part of your sort of growing up and learning about the wider world.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that always gets forgotten. A lot of the discussions around higher education now are on what way does it prepare you for a job, and what do you get out of economically. It's very cutthroat, which I think is a shame, because I think being educated in general, people being educated in general just helps society in so many different ways, so many unquantifiable ways, that to try to put a specific price on it, I think really misses the point. To try to put a specific cost on it just gets people into that mindset where they go, well, I have something that I really want to do in my life, but I can't do that because I'm afraid that I won't have enough money to live a decent life after I graduate, which I think is absolutely tragic to say that in a country like the UK in the 21st century.
Yeah, and I think that just reflects the fact that we are still a rich country. There are other countries in Europe that have got far more people at university where they don't pay any fees. Also, far more people in Europe where actually people aged 18 to 21 who perhaps aren't going to university also get really good training and support as well. And I think it isn't just about education, just about universities. It's also about all the 45% of the population that won't go to university, but also need training, need support. Need life chances like people that go to university too as well. And the other thing I think also that Green Party policies, because it's a lifelong approach really, just because you're 30 doesn't mean you can't go to university, etc. Is also our heavy emphasis on early years education really, and the fact that we need to top end early years education. We need to move away from the culture of testing that I think both Labour, Lib Dems and the Tories are very, very intent on. Everybody forgets it was Labour that brought in most of the testing back in the 90s. And
I think it's really sad there's such an emphasis on testing. I can understand why, because with testing that gives you a figure to point to judge an individual by, and then governments say, well, we increase testing by this. But I think the reality is if you introduce testing in whatever, be it education or whatever else, then suddenly you're not trying to improve based on how educated you are, how prepared you are. You're trying to improve based on what the results of that test are.
Yeah.
And the results of the test don't necessarily mean how educated you are, how prepared you are for life.
Yeah. I think teachers end up teaching to the test rather than actually teaching to become a more sort of rounded individual. And I think if you look at examples of very successful education systems like Finland, they don't do any testing and they rely on teachers, the pressures of teachers to do what they're doing. Really.
They have the one test now, but I think they're actually moving to a system where it's not being taught by subject, but it's being taught by scenario. So instead of trying to have individual things, so like, okay, now you're learning maths, now you're learning history, now you're learning IT skills, they do something like, okay, you're going to set up a shop and let's look at all of these skills you have, apply them together, apply them in a group environment, and let's actually, teach you real life skills. And that's always the thing that's taught about. We need students to learn real life skills and how to apply them. Well, if you want to teach them that, then if you want them to learn that, then why not teach students that?